Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Intercooler podcast. Today, we're talking about the Nürburgring. Not just the Nürburgring, but we're going to be sort of focusing on Nürburgring track days, good and bad. We want some amusing stories. We want some anecdotes, but also I think some sort of worthy advice as well from an authority, Andrew, on the subject.
Indeed.
Before we get into that, before I introduce our guest, it's still not too early to... No, I'll do that again. Bear with. Before I introduce our guest, though, I will remind you all that you still have time to buy a gift subscription to the Intercooler as a Christmas gift. And if you do it now, as in before the middle of November, we're doing an early bird offer and you can get 10% off the cost of a gift subscription. When you check out, use coupon code GIFT10 and that will apply the 10% discount. Now, remember that you can buy the gift subscription now and choose when it will arrive with the recipient. And the recipient activates it whenever they want. So really, there's no reason not to take advantage of this early bird 10% discount. So just head to the-intercooler.com/gift, use coupon code GIFT10 for a 10% discount, and we'll be very grateful. But let's move it on to this week's episode, because opposite me now is Darren Langeveld. Now, that name will be familiar to some of our listeners, and actually, I'm sure lots of our listeners and viewers will have been on a Destination Nürburgring track day with you, because that's presumably what you're best known for these days, Darren?
Yeah, good morning. Nice to
be
here.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you. Yes, I would say that, or track days, UK track days in general.
Okay.
Because prior to Destination Nürburgring, starting that, I was working a lot with another track day company, Circuit Days, and I was doing driver briefings and instruction and stuff like that. So saw hundreds and thousands of people a year through that, so made a lot of good contacts.
Yeah, so as I said, you are an authority on track days, but also specifically Nürburgring track days. But let's sort of discuss your background a little bit. We were just talking before we came on air. Sounds like you're from a car family. You're certainly from a car city.
Yes, Coventry. The UK's Detroit.
Yeah.
Motown.
Coventry born and bred. And yeah, I suppose that whole automotive kind of flavour just distills into everyone in Coventry. If the families used to be very much working in factories, obviously Coventry was a huge manufacturing hub prior to the Second World War and after. And we've still got an awful lot of automotive kind of stuff that goes on in and around the area, from the universities through to manufacturing, specialist stuff, engineering. A lot of it still exists and is still utilised by, more global players. So, things like Multimatic still have a presence in Coventry, and obviously they manufacture low-volume sports cars for Mercedes, for example. So,
yeah, Aston Martin.
Aston Martin, obviously we've got a huge Jaguar Land Rover presence, but in my family's case, it was all going back to, my family was originally from Cape Town. And my grandfather kind of...
I was wondering about the surname.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound very Coventry.
No, well, I was in Holland on Monday. I went to Zandvoort for a track day, and everywhere I stopped, everyone was saying, you check into the hotel, they ask for a passport. Oh, you've got a Dutch name. Yeah, it's via Cape Town in my family. Yeah. And they all know. But my grandfather was a mechanic, and it was quite fluky, actually. There's quite a few strokes of luck. He won a pools lottery in South Africa, and decided he was going to emigrate to the UK and buy a garage business. And he found himself in Sussex and managed to buy a property and became a Humber dealer he specialised in American cars, actually. But then became a Humber, Hillman kind of dealer. And then my dad actually got sent to Coventry to do his apprenticeship at Hillman, and then met my mum, and the rest is history, really. We just made a base there. But my dad, actually, he's one of those rare people these days that has started off in a company and had one job until he retired. He did not move company. I mean, the company morphed around him, and Hillman, then, Chrysler, Talbot, Peugeot,
and
then retired from Peugeot. But he essentially stayed with the same company.
So
And then
could you have just as easily have gone down the route of selling cars or engineering them or whatever else?
it's funny. I remember when I was kind of like a teenager, I didn't really want anything to do with cars. I couldn't see. I remember having a very specific thought. I couldn't see that there would be a long-term thing because at the time we were all being, at that age. Well, I'm looking at you. I'm looking at more at Andrew. We were being bombarded with the messaging that oil was going to run out. Cars were going to be a luxury that nobody could afford, and so I couldn't really see any future in it. So I spent many years having nothing to do with the motor trade, or as little as possible, but still having the enthusiasm for the products.
Just at a time when we are, I guess, again at some kind of crossroads in the car industry. I'm just interested in your thoughts on what happens, particularly with sort of track days with EVs. Do you get a lot of Teslas turning up at track days? No. So what's going to happen? Are track days going to end up being for historic vehicles, or
no?
How's it going to work?
I firmly believe that we're going to be using cars at some point in the future in a similar way to that we use horses now.
Absolutely.
And cars are going to become, internal combustion engine cars. It's not going to happen in my lifetime, I don't think. But I think they're going to become a play thing. It's going to be very much an elite thing. It's going to be based on synthetic fuels.
Yeah.
And it's going to continue. And I think that as long as people have got enthusiasm, and that's the thing I worry about.
Yeah.
Is are the kids of today going to be as enthused about stuff as we are now about stuff in our past?
Yeah. It's a very interesting point. And will there be cars still being created to satisfy that market, or is that market going to have to become reliant on cars that were built a long time ago? And if that's the case, will they still be happy to drive their car from wherever they live in the UK to the Nürburgring, spend a couple of days thrashing around the Nordschleife and then driving it back again? I'm guessing possibly not.
Well, you say that, but you think at the moment, we've got exemptions for smaller manufacturers like Ferrari have said they'll all carry on making turbo combustion engine cars and stuff. You know about that more than I do. But I was thinking about this on the way down. I was thinking, as we move ever more towards a virtual world and AI, this, and people are worried about their jobs and computers are getting smarter, and, we're looking at all of that kind of stuff. I think people will need and want and seek out that visceral, real experience. And certainly track days is my thing, and I don't think that you can get anything that replicates that rush, anything that replicates that experience in the virtual world. You just can't do it.
No.
I mean, I'm not a sim racer. I'm no good on the bloody things, to be honest with you. But I know people that are. But they all come from sims, and they all come to the Nürburgring, for example, and they have those first few laps, and they're all blown away.
So are we seeing the start of what you're talking about now? I mean, is presumably business is pretty good. Are people not increasingly turning to that kind of recreation, particularly as roads get busier, policing becomes, greater, and people, who may have to go about their daily business in, an EV, which isn't particularly exciting, are they increasingly falling upon track days and, more traditional cars as a way of doing exactly what you said, just, keeping themselves in touch with reality?
Yeah, I think you're right. We've seen certain, like 2008, the financial crash in 2008, and then again in 2015. We were really worried that we were going to see some kind of downturn, because it's very much kind of discretionary spend. It's like designer clothes. I've got friends in that business, and track days are no different. It's a very, very discretionary spend, and we were bracing ourselves for a downturn, and the reverse happened, which was really odd. So we were planning for a slowdown, or planning to ramp up marketing, or have to work harder to actually fill the events. But what actually happened was, weirdly, the reverse happened. Business is booming, to be quite honest with you, and I think at the Nürburgring especially, there's a few factors that factor that we can talk about. But I think that people will still want to kind of have that physical experience in a car around a circuit, away from the police, away from as much of that risk as you can take out.
Well, that's right, probably more so in future, because road driving is actually going to become less and less thrilling.
Yes,
I would imagine.
Yes, because, well, two reasons. One, you've touched on it with EVs. I mean, you've got Hyundai doing some interesting stuff with their EV.
Have you driven it?
I haven't. I'd love to drive it.
It works annoyingly well.
Yeah.
You really don't want it to work, and you just think this is a really stupid gimmick.
Yeah.
And then you turn it on, and every time you get back in the car, you just turn it on again because it's just a bit of added interest in what might otherwise be a not particularly interesting experience.
Yes. Well, that's interesting. I'd like to drive it. Maybe one day I'll get my hands
You
on
would
one.
be. I mean, it's got a rev limiter.
Yes.
And you go da-da-da-da-da,
and it will sit on the limiter.
And it'll just sit on the limiter, and it is.
No, but to the point where it sits on the limiter, but it holds the car back, so you're not accelerating.
Yeah.
It's like you're in a manual gearbox car combustion engine, sat on the
love
limiter,
that.
stuck.
And we all sit in cinemas knowing what we're watching is artifice.
Yeah.
And it doesn't trouble us at all. We buy into it completely.
Yes.
And this is that.
Yeah.
You're just sitting there, and you know it's just coming out the speakers, but it's fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was remarkable. Sorry, go on.
There's definitely, that's one factor. EVs generally at the moment are pretty dull to drive.
100%.
One trick ponies, 0 to 60 or whatever they do, and that's it.
Yeah.
Not interesting to me at all. I think the second thing is that the game has moved on drastically in terms of the access point of performance of a lot of vehicles these days. Your average 205s.
Yeah.
I love. Sorry to talk about old Peugeot.
No, it's
I reckon that took less than 15 minutes.
I'm kind of hoping that we get around to that
all
quite
right,
quickly.
all right. I don't know about you guys, but I had a misspent youth in very low-powered cars, which taught me everything about momentum, how hard fought it is, and how
carry speed
crucial it is to keep it. But we were running around in, my first car was a Talbot Sunbeam. I think it was a 1.3. It would have had, 60 horsepower or something like that. The first hot hatch I had would have been a 205, maybe a Talbot Samba Rally, but that's a bit more obscure. But a 205, 115 horsepower at the time, 1.6. Now your entry point for hot hatches is 300 horsepower plus? Or 250, 300 horsepower?
Yeah, double.
And, we would see on track days, we'd see loads of Mark II Golfs, kind of Unosis, Mark 1 MX5s, 205s, all those kind of stuff are a rarity now.
Yeah.
You look around the average track day car park and it's all hot hatches, GT3s. Or
is that an entirely good thing? Does it mean it's becoming more less accessible experience?
It is, but there's more people with more money who appear to be buying more of these things.
Yeah.
And they're all, looking for the same kind of experience. I mean, I don't turn any car away, apart from a few years ago I made a decision to slice off the GT3 race cars because they're so fast. And I had loads of people trying to bring Citroen C1 race cars, and I said, no, it's got to, have over such CC and stuff like that because they're so slow. I mean, but generally, I don't discriminate against kind of cars.
Do you feel, particularly at somewhere like the Nürburgring? I mean, I can remember the first race I ever did at the ring. I was in a Clio Cup car. I was doing a VLN, and there were Vipers, GT1 Vipers, and Hans Stuck was in an M3 GTR.
I bet that was quite interesting.
It was the first race I enjoyed having done much more than I enjoyed doing it. I was really pleased to have done it, but I wasn't having a good time in the car. And the point being is, particularly at the Nürburgring, is why I'm interested in your perspective on this. It's not like a UK circuit where you've got long straights and you can see them coming.
No, you've got no straight.
You can't see them coming because it's they're always behind the brow and they tend to hunt in pack. So do you? I guess the serious question is: do you, as a track day organizer, do you feel that there is any kind of duty of care to ensure that you don't have cars on the track together with insane closing speeds, which could just go over a brow 50 miles an hour quicker than something else and just find something in its path?
That's a very good point. And on the continent, some French track day organisers organise cars by power to weight ratios and stuff, and by legally. In Italy, you can't run track cars, race cars, and street cars on the same sessions. You have to session them and stuff like that legally.
Yeah.
I'm hanging on to the driver's briefing. I'm hanging on to the fact that I can talk to everybody in the briefing. I can explain the rules to everyone, explain how, the overtaking, explain what they can expect from each other, what they can expect from me, etc. And I'm clinging on to the fact that they make good decisions based on that whole briefing. Yeah. And I don't discriminate against cars. I'm clinging on to it. But you're absolutely right. The closing speeds. I mean, a 992 RS at the moment is as quick as a GT3 race car, probably marginally quicker on the right tyres with the right driver. And it's savagely fast.
Yeah.
Savagely fast.
Yeah.
Compared to almost anything that's out there.
And I guess another problem that you have is if someone bins it, and, people invest a lot of time and a lot of money to go on your track days. Someone sticks it on the wall in a fairly major way. That's an awful lot of everybody else's track time that gets eaten up. Just clearing up the track. So what do you do? I mean, other than the briefing? I mean, I used to, for some other organisers, the only instructing I've ever done because I'm a terrible passenger. So I insisted on driving the cars, but just going around the ring and showing people where to really watch out and where bad stuff could happen, and that did have a material effect on the number of cars. And in that experience, it tended not to be the absolute rookies. It was people who kind of thought they might know which way it went and then got it wrong. It must be a real concern for you that you don't spend, half the time with all your punters stuck in the paddock waiting for, somebody else's wreckage to get cleared up.
Yeah, well, €11,000 an hour to rent the places.
Wow.
€11,000 an hour.
An hour.
And I'd say that in the briefing. I tell everyone in the briefings as well because, I tell them it's like, this is why we don't. We run sighting laps first for the first session, but we don't red flag to bring everyone in to, then mark the start of the green flag sessions.
Yeah.
€11,000 an hour. It takes me 25, 30 minutes to empty the track. That's expensive track time. So this is why I really get it across to the guys that they need to be careful. They need to be aware of what's at stake here. They've paid really good money and strong money to come on the event.
Yeah.
But in the wider scheme, this is the cost of you making a mistake isn't just you ending up with a bit of barrier damage, which could be substantial, but
expensive.
Yeah. And a difficult conversation with the missus on the phone that night about why you weren't coming home with the car in the same shape it was when you left and stuff. But it's the impact on everyone else. We're quite fortunate. One thing with Destination Nürburgring is we've got a good bunch of customers that kind of know the way that these events work and value the way that the events work and uphold it as well. The customers really buy into the events quite nicely. You're always going to get something that goes wrong. I mean, in July we had a GTR that lost some oil, and the guy didn't realise, and he did the last 3-4 kilometres, and it was wet, and that caused a 3-hour stop. Well, we tried to deal with that.
Wow.
That was horrendous. But they're few and far between when we get that. And the safety teams, I will, say you get a safety package that's got, 2 recovery trucks and the E-units, the American wagons that go around with all the, the oil spill stuff on them. I will double that. So I'll have, 4 recovery vehicles working. Yeah. And I'll have all of the E-units they can get. And I'll even pay for Net, who make the barriers and replace all of the barriers, the German company. I'll pay for them, instead of waiting down in Hirschbräuch, I'll pay for one of their crews to be sat at T13. So that if then we get a stop or somebody hits the barrier to the point where, we need to set a work zone up so they can replace it there and then because it's not safe to carry on, they're there on track instantly instead of waiting for 20 minutes to drag those Unimogs up from Hirschbräuch in Adenau. So there's all these little things that I'll do to make sure to mitigate against delays and stops. But as we all know, sometimes stuff can just go wrong.
It's still the Nürburgring, isn't it?
It's still the ring.
Anyone, no matter how quick you are, how experienced you are, you can have a problem around there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It happens.
Or you could just find yourself on top of somebody else's problem.
Yeah.
I
mean, they've just installed all of the light boards instead of flags. We do put marshals out as well. We put 40 marshals out on flagging points. Wow. They've got the AI camera system up and running and testing at the moment that monitors traffic flow, and when there's a car stopped, it will flag up instantly. So that's going to be deployed properly next year for the 2025 season.
Yeah.
There's camera sight of the Nordschleife, I would say 90% of it for the first time ever, which that was always the problem with running TV broadcasts from the Nordschleife back in the day, was just the thousands of kilometres of cables that they would need to put in to run power and signals and stuff, which is why back in a few years ago when Vodafone launched their 5G service, everybody was like really excited because now they could get some live telemetry back from the cars and possibly even some live video feeds for the first time ever.
Yeah.
So, you think about the place, the nature, the geography of it. It's all of these challenges that only just now, after however many years, we're coming up for the 100th year in 2027, aren't we? So
It sounds to me like a lot of investment has gone in.
Yeah.
And I can remember a time, it wasn't that long ago, when the place appeared to be in some kind of financial trouble and it was up for sale. And so I'm just wondering what's happened. So presumably the place is fit and healthy and good to go now.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think what happened was at the time there was, because that was the whole point when I kind of started Destination Nürburgring. There was a lot of flux and change and uncertainty, financial at the time, back in 2008, 9, and around then, around the whole construction of this new complex at the top, which they called Neuro Disney at the
I remember.
time.
Yeah.
But it was at the time. You think back when Bernie Ecclestone was threatening to pull the Silverstone Grand Prix because the roads were rubbish, and they built the A43. Just to be able to get traffic in and out and make all of that kind of stuff. That was how little circuits had investment at the time, and that's how much Formula One certainly was pushing circuits to upgrade all of their infrastructure. But it went through. At the time there was a consortium led by an American hedge fund and some UK guys that were looking at quite favourite to buy it with a very favourable bid. But I think there was this Germanic pride at the time that said it had to go to a German company with a German CEO, and there was all sorts of shenanigans that went on. But it's ended up in the ownership of a Russian kind of. He's a farmer kind of guy, billionaire type guy. Who cares about the place, and he'll tip up and he'll drive TF and he'll drive at track days, and he's been on a DN at some point in the past where you just get that phone call going, I know you're sold out and I know you're full, but it'd be really helpful if you could accommodate one more guest. And okay, Victor. Okay.
He owns the place.
I think we'll find a way. Do you ever worry? Obviously the vast majority of the Nürburgring's business isn't track days.
No. Goodness, no. And you can see how healthy it is and how much money they're actually making.
So they're making an enormous amount of money from car manufacturers, from tyre manufacturers, just testing. Do you ever worry that they're going to one day turn around and go, well, guys, it's been great. It's been a lot of laughs, but with the best will in the world, we can earn far more money from just hiring out the tractor manufacturers and other OEMs. So we're not going to be doing track days anymore.
That would rely. I genuinely don't think the rates change from what they sell the track time to me for as it would do for Bill Stein or anyone else like that.
Okay.
Bill Stein.
So
I think that I give or take.
Yeah.
I don't think because of exactly that they know what the track's worth and they know they can get it.
Yeah.
How much more would I pay is the only real question.
Yeah.
How much more would I pay?
But your customers would pay more and more and more if that's what it took, wouldn't they?
Well, last year, the 2024 seasons, I sold that out in 36 hours last December.
Wow.
It just every
so
place
presumably,
went.
are you always banging on their door saying, any spare day you've got, I'll take?
Yes, but every free date that my colleagues at the Nürburgring have, they could sell 10, 12 times over. 2 OEMs looking for. ProDrive. Can I say this? Nobody's really listening, are they?
No.
We don't
just
have
us.
an audience. It's
ProDrive are over there last week, the week before, and a few weeks before that. They're doing some. I think they're doing some work for a manufacturer somewhere in the world.
Yeah.
And they're looking for, that they want to get some exposure for this manufacturer and lap times and stuff. But they've bought 5-6 days exclusively just to try and get a lap time on one car.
Wow.
And when you're up against
5 or 6 days to get
bloody hell.
Yeah.
A lap time, which is probably something in the sort of like 6 minute. Yeah. So 5 or 6, so a day per minute of lap time. Yeah.
But you've got to remember that I think 5 of those were aborted because of wet weather.
And you're not getting a refund, are you?
You're not getting refunds.
I was there that day. Timo Bernhard did the lap in the Porsche 919 Evo.
Yeah.
And the astonishing thing with that was they'd booked one day and they'd invited the media.
Yeah.
And so we all schlepped over from the UK and media came from all over Europe. And we were just thinking, well, what if the weather's a bit crap or the track temperature isn't quite where we wanted to be? And they just went, well, we'll just go home again. And I just thought that was so gutsy. And for some reason, I think they could only run in the morning. I don't know whether it was because it was going to get too warm and the tyres wouldn't work or whatever. But they had like a 2-hour window, and it had to be perfect.
That is
and
good.
it was. But given that we'd been invited probably a month before, there was no guaranteeing that was going to work. It was extraordinarily gutsy.
Yeah.
But fortune does sometimes favour the brave, doesn't it? So
The sun shines on the righteous.
Yeah, well, indeed.
That's one of my favourite sayings.
Yeah.
It is raining today, actually. So talk to me about barrier repairs, because people are worried about that, aren't they?
People are
probably
worried,
quite rightly.
very rightly.
So what happens? You have an off, you damage a barrier.
Yeah.
You've got to pay for the barrier and the repair.
Yeah, I mean, well, one step back. UK track day rules are very different to European track day organisers' rules. European track day organisers' rules, your road insurance works, and so
if you live in Europe and you have,
if you're European registered car with European insurance,
Right.
generally your road insurance works because a track day isn't racing and it's driver training, so it's covered. So the downside of that is that there's a liability between participants. That's covered by insurance.
So somebody takes you out,
you can claim on their insurance,
Okay.
and vice versa.
Okay.
Yeah,
Which doesn't work in the UK at all.
it doesn't work in the UK at all. And there are some nations that are having increasingly difficult times for their road insurance to cover them on Touristenfahrt, and all the stuff that we've been through already in the UK. It's starting to creep in, and in Holland, it's incredibly difficult to get road policies that cover for the Nordschleife in the same way as we do. But anyway, the reason I'm saying that is because UK track day organisers such as me, we offer the customer the removal of that third-party liability.
Yeah.
So it's effectively, everybody signs the waiver disclaimer. Everybody understands that there is no insurance cover. You can't claim off other participants and stuff like that. So that is a massive weight off a lot of people's shoulders, that they know and understand that third-party liability, as best as it ever can be, because you can always get civil court cases, etc.
But I bet it hardly ever happens.
It's happened once in 14 years.
Yeah.
And that was accidental. And as soon as I got a barrister on it, he kind of dealt with it and interfaced it, and then it went away. Because as soon as the insurance company, the Belgian insurance company, actually realised that what the day was, then they just said, okay, we'll
So
just...
So there's never been a successful civil claim?
Not on a DN track day, no.
Okay.
Not on a DN track day. So you remove that third-party liability. I offer... If you break down on track, I'll get you in for free. I'm not going to charge you for recovery and stuff, which is also very different to Touristenfahrt and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But what I can't get you out of is if you damage the circuit infrastructure, if you cause an oil spill, and if there's a cost to sort that out, then I can't get you out of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we will charge for. Do you want to know the costs?
Yes, we do.
Oh no! Everybody wants to know the costs. Well, obviously, there's a lot of different nuts and bolts and stuff. If you think about the tyre barriers, the rubber sections, that can be about €4 a metre. The individual roofing screws that they use to fix are 66 cents. Most of
He's
the
come prepared, isn't he?
most of the guardrail, well, yeah, or you go all the way through to the FIA catch fencing.
Yeah.
One of the angled heads on the top of those can be €400-500, and that's to largely be made kind of almost to the section of track that it's on.
Yeah.
Most people think in terms of guardrail. Obviously, you've got per metre. Each section of guardrail is 4 metres long. If you have to replace, even if you just put a little dink in it, the Nürburgring have to change it because they have to maintain the FIA circuit licence.
Yeah.
So they've got to maintain the infrastructure of the track. So even if you scratch it and it deforms slightly, you're going to get charged. It's something like €64 a metre, but obviously it's 4 metres long. Most cars will dink. Bear in mind sometimes it's stacked up 4 high. So if you go in,
so that's per length. So you could,
so it's per 4 metres.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you go in and hit that, you damage even if you went in and did a perfect crease down the track, you're looking at 16 metres in some cases. But then it's €22 to remove the old stuff, and then 64 to put the new stuff back on. And
22 per metre per
metre
removed.
Removed.
Okay.
But each stretch is 4 metres long.
Well, no, indeed.
Each fence post is kind of 25 metres if you can €25 per fence post if you can reuse it. The grass seed, they charge for that as well. To recite. Obviously, you've got to reinstate that. It can get quite spendy quite quick. I would say the minimum, even if you have the lightest of touches on a guardrail, I would say the minimum barrier damage you're looking at is probably around €600-700.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is, people really need to take it seriously, don't they? We're not trying to scare people off. That's not the point of this. But you have to approach it in the right way, don't you?
Well, I talk about this in all driver briefings.
Yeah.
So you do want to almost put the fear of God in people, and people need to remember that there are consequences to certain scenarios.
Is it true that certain UK insurance companies don't insure cars for the roads immediately around the Nürburgring? Because I know someone very well who caused a very great deal of damage to something on the Nürburgring, and then just parked it in the Dorrent car park and said it happened on the road, and they paid up, but it was a long time ago.
Haven't really paid that much attention to it. Haven't heard anything like that recently. I'm sure that, back in the day, stuff like that happened. If people had accidents on Touristenfahrt and then towed the car, down to Dollendorf or something, and just said they'd crashed it.
Yeah.
There's not a lot you can do unless the insurers stick some loss adjusters on it who suspect there might be some malfeasance going on and then follow it up. But the insurance industry as a whole is just too big. I think they just work on numbers, don't they? So they'll either pay or they don't.
So what is the deal with insurance on your days?
It's first party. You insure your own risk.
Yeah.
You insure your own risk. It's trickier to get insurance cover simply because some of these cars, are worth 350,000.
Yeah.
And you've got, the potential for an insurer to have to do that on a one day. The premiums are starting to get spendy. They're starting to put limits in. The excesses can be, 15-20% of the car's value.
But you get an excess at both ends now, don't you? So you can get an insurance which comes in, and they won't pay below a certain amount, but they'll also stop paying above a certain amount. Insurance
is interesting on track days because it's such a small market for most insurers. It's, they don't really get a good handle on the risk. And I've heard of those kind of, where you can insure those kind of excesses and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But only on certain Touristenfahrt car rentals or something like that. I've not really heard of it as a wider insurance product.
Okay.
I do need to sit down and have a really good conversation with a few insurers because there's a lot of insurers that won't insure track days generally.
Yeah.
First party cover. I think Destination Nürburgring, I've been told by a few insurers, is one of the few that they will feel comfortable for quoting.
That's interesting.
It is interesting. It was news to me because I never insure my cars on track.
But you don't have a sort of like a pet insurer that you direct your customers to?
No, but I've not done that because I've always felt that that customers, and it's the same as I don't kind of pre-book hotels or stuff like that. Customers know what they need and they've got their preferred places and preferred suppliers.
Yeah.
And I never wanted to kind of go down the route of having like a deal with a certain insurer that I would then endorse.
Yeah.
That then says down the line, say a customer didn't get what they needed or something happened, then I'd feel partially obligated. I don't know. I'm not that commercially kind of. What's the word I'm looking for? Not that kind of like commercially desperate to do those kind of deals. I think I'd rather leave that up to the individuals.
So now that we've put the fear of God into everybody,
why
should someone who maybe done quite a few track days in the UK and maybe they might have popped over to Spa or whatever, why should they go to the Nürburgring?
Well, there's just one sentence. It's because it's the last great driving frontier. It really is. You can't do what you can do on the Nürburgring, you cannot do anywhere else. You cannot have that experience on any other circuit. You can't have it on any public road. It's the last great driving frontier. It's like Mecca for petrol heads. I mean, we all know, right? Even if you go and you don't drive the track, it's still a wonderful place to spend time.
Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful. And I've been all around the world. I've done tracks all around the world. I'm sure the same as you guys do.
Yeah.
But the Nürburgring is just special.
I think we are all, as enthusiasts, looking for experiences, motoring-related experiences we haven't had before.
Yeah.
And if you haven't been to the Nürburgring, that is an experience unlike anything. You can go to every track that there's ever been, and there is nothing like the Nürburgring. Now, you may come away from it, and I'm sure a lot of people do, thinking, wow, that was really interesting. I'm really glad I did it. Never coming back because it's just too much. And I completely understand that. I mean, I would say that I enjoy racing at Spa much more than I enjoyed racing at the Nürburgring, because VLN is just too full on for me. It's absolutely nuts. Whereas, you race somewhere like Spa, the safety levels are a lot better, and it's just the whole thing's a lot more containable. So I do understand those. But if, as I was saying, you want that experience, if in your life you just think, what great car experience have I not had? There is something, to an extent, is it fair to say that your education as an enthusiast isn't complete until at least you've done a lap?
Well, why stop at one lap?
Well, indeed. But some might.
The place, some might, but the place is that diverse in terms of you could go on a car Freitag Touristenfahrten weekend, which, there's a million cars there, and have a great experience, but you wouldn't do many laps. Or you could go on an old-timers Grand Prix weekend and see some of the fantastic machinery that's there, or go on a truck drivers weekend and go camping in the forest where they're digging up boars wrapped in foil under fires that they've set the night before. And, you can go all of these different experiences at the one place before you even go out on the track, to be honest with you. And I don't know about you, the first track, what was your first track you ever drove? Can you remember?
Goodwood, when it was a shabby old test track.
Dan?
Castle Combe.
Mine was the Ring.
Yeah, that's quite punchy. Wow.
So mine was the Ring, and
Wow.
I came away from the place. I came away from it. I remember. I wish I could have that first lap again. I really wish. I love going out in cars with people.
What were you in?
Haven't been. I was in a Caterham.
Were you?
Yeah.
I was in a 205 GTI.
Well, fantastic.
Yeah.
What better cars?
Yeah.
My brother owned a Caterham, and we were camping. It was an old timers weekend. I remember I got my hat signed by Derek Bell, sat in the Lindenhof in Nürburgring. It was fantastic.
Brilliant.
But yeah, we went camping, so we chucked a very small tent, 2 toothbrushes, 2 spare pairs of underpants, and just went off to the Ring. And I remember getting what probably was round to, I don't know, Flansgarten or somewhere, and just being mentally overwhelmed by the whole thing.
Yeah.
Thinking, when's it ever going to end?
I thinking to yourself, how can anyone ever learn this?
Yeah, and that was the key for me.
Yeah.
I went home, I'm lying in bed, trying to do laps in my head, as you do, and it kind of gets under your skin. And then for me, it became a need to learn the track.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how this business formed, really. It was a need. I didn't want to learn it. I needed to learn that track. I needed to learn it.
I owe it to Derek Bell, because before there were any sort of sims or machines that you could PlayStations or whatever, there was In-Car 956.
Wonderful.
And it's just okay. You're going a bit quick.
Yeah.
But I had that Duke video, and I played it and played it and played it until I basically wore it out, trying to learn. Yeah, so so I learnt it from the inside of a 956 being driven by Derek Bell.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
What a great series that was.
Unbelievable.
So, I mean, that's actually a very good point. If I am doing my first Nürburgring track day with you, how do I approach it? I feel like I know my way around it on a PlayStation, so I'm pretty confident.
Oh, God.
Yeah, you're a nightmare. You are a nightmare. He may not take you.
Well, firstly, you'd be welcomed. You would be welcomed. If I got the sense, if we'd had some preamble, some pre-coms or something where you'd said that you hadn't been before but you really wanted to go, we do try and appeal to more experienced Nürburgring people, especially we've got a couple of different formats. If you said to me, "Oh, Darren, I've never been before. I want to come on one of the Ringmeisters, kind of pro track events in the summer," I'd be like, "Dan, I'll be honest with you. It's a big boys track day. Don't. Come on one of the super street series, because we run. We split them out with pro track. You can run race cars, non-road legal cars. The super streets, it's got to be road legal, street tyres. Takes a lot of heat out of it, really. To be honest with you, I'd be like, come along to that. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll put an instructor in the car with you, so you can go around. I'll jump in with you, after lunch or something, and see how you're getting on, and we'll just really kind of put our arms around you to make sure you get a good experience. But these are big boys track days. An apology I don't make any apologies for that. They are because the nature of the place. They are not for novices generally. They're really not. I would much rather that you went and did a few TF weekends, or midweek TF sessions, even better if you can take
So
some
can you just
time
explain
off.
what to the audience what a TF session is?
Touristenfahrten is the public driving. It's in 1927 when the circuit first opened. That's what they started doing. That's what they've been doing ever since, and that's what they probably will be doing for long after you and I kind of have got any interest in the place.
Yeah.
Touristenfahrten is wonderful. The road is technically a one-way public toll road. It just goes round in a big circle and brings you back where you were. But it's fantastic because the atmosphere is wonderful. The risk is part of the thrill. You never know. You're on track with people who you've no idea what their skill level is. You've no idea what country they're from, what language they speak. You've got bikes.
Yeah, it's not just cars.
Buses. Yeah. Everything on track at once. It's unbelievably thrilling.
Yeah.
Even now, to me, I will still, even though I pay, all of that money to rent the circuit and run my own events, I will still go and do TF every now and again just to remind myself about the thrill of the place. And I think that, again, coming back to what we were talking about at the outset, the thrill, the experience is exciting, and you do crave it, I think. But TF is incredibly popular. We were talking earlier about, is the Nürburgring financially fit and healthy? You just look at the sheer volume and weight of cars that go there every weekend to drive.
Absolutely.
When you've got queues 4 abreast running from the track exit all the way back down Dottingerhoe to the gantry.
Yeah.
Yeah, waiting just to get off the track.
Oh, really?
They put 650 vehicles out on track at any one time.
No.
And it's so busy, and it's great because you think about
Can you actually drive? I mean, can you actually get your clog down, or are you just weaving through traffic all the time?
You're weaving through traffic, and I think that the problem is you've got a lot of people that don't or haven't or won't pay for a track day or can't.
Yeah.
That will go and they'll pay the €30, and they will be like, this lap's got to count, and I'm going for that, sub 8, 7.5 minutes. And I just don't care.
Yeah.
And that's in TF. You see some really bad accidents.
That is reckless, actually, isn't it?
It is, but that's you're paying that money. You've saved up all year. It's your one and only trip you can afford. You're going home tomorrow. You've had the track's been closed more than it's been open all morning. It's just gone green. You're thinking, right, this is my chance until next year. That's the kind of pressure people put on themselves. But you do see some pretty nasty accidents.
Yeah.
Because of that. It's just the risk is mental. It's mental, the amount of risk.
I remember doing a tourist day a few years ago. We went there for a full day. It was so busy. And when you're out on track, it's great. I mean, the track is busy. You have to be careful.
Yeah.
You can't do qualifying laps, really. But it will close because someone will have an accident and it'll be closed for a long time.
Yeah.
And then the queues to rejoin will go round the roundabout and down the road.
Yeah.
I think I did 2 or 3 laps in a day.
And that's why track days are so successful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
how many cars will you have on track?
Not that many.
What's not that many?
Well, it depends. I mean, a Ringmeister's Prime will be 120 cars on the event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay. So half of them on the track at any one time?
If that.
Yeah.
If that.
I did one of your days in 2016 in a then new 991 GT3 RS. Perfect car, really. Yeah. Very, very lucky to get to do that. And it was just fabulous to get to have a proper crack at that track in an amazing car.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Yeah, and that's the benefit of people are starting to warm to. Like I said, people, they want to drive the track.
Yeah.
They get frustrated with the public driving the Touristenfahrten sessions, and they look for track days, and that's when they make the jump, to organisers who are running track days. And there's probably about 7 or 8 TDOs that are organising track from around the world, and they've got a choice now of they can have that experience with all of the melee and the danger and the risk. Or you can come and do a track day. It might be midweek, but you remove all of that risk, and you can actually do 20 laps in a day if you wanted to. If you if you were in a diesel, you could probably do 30 if you were just committed. And that suddenly it doesn't look so expensive.
Yeah.
You know, if
That's
you work out the
you get way more back. Yeah.
you get way more back. So the upfront cost with a track day is significant, but the value for money is massive, and you can't really put a value on how much reduced risk you've got.
Yeah, and also by the time you've paid for your fuel to get from the UK to that part of Germany, for your crossing, for your hotel, everything else, the cost of the track day probably isn't the better part of it. You know, so it's absolutely worth it.
So imagine you're somebody listening to this, and you've always wanted to go to the Nürburgring. You haven't yet done it, but maybe listening to this, you think, okay, I'm going to give it a go. What is the sort of most sensible entry level car that I mean, if somebody's got a completely standard E46 M3, is that going to be completely swamped on your days, or is it? I mean, clearly you're saying that things like MX-5s and that sort of thing don't tend to turn up anymore because the pace is just. But if you had a Golf GTI or something like that, would that be sufficient? What sort of car should people have before they should think about coming on one of your super street days?
I would say something that's going to forgive them. So you mentioned a Golf GTI. In my mind, that's a perfect car.
Yeah.
Something front-wheel drive, not too slow. It's
Sure.
going to get mugged everywhere. on a track day, there's no, especially if it's your first time.
Yeah.
You could be in a 992 GT3 RS, and if it's your first time there, you're going to get mugged.
You're going to get mugged by Golf GTOs.
Yeah, you are.
By GTI. You're going to get mugged. So it's a knowledge track more than a power track.
Sure.
So while you don't know what you don't know, get yourself a benign car that's going to look after you. So I always recommend something like that. You know, get a quick-ish, safe hot hatch. I'd rent, to be honest with you. I'd go and talk to one of the rental companies around the Nürburgring and just rent a car with a cage in it and decent semi-slicks and decent pads that's just basically built to go around there.
Yeah. Oh, that's okay. So just talk a little bit about that. So you can just turn up at the ring and rent a car, and they know exactly what you're going to get and do with it, and that's all part of the understanding.
Yep, they're well used to it. There's plenty of firms that are very good, very reliable, that have got good fleets, that are reasonably prepared, that can give you a really good experience without risking your own car.
And you can find these in the towns around the Nürburgring.
You can find them in the towns around the Nürburgring. There's a very good page on my website on dnevents.com that lists a few of the more reputable ones that you can go to.
That's really interesting. So you could swan across in something big and comfortable and luxurious, and then thrash somebody else's car around, and then at the end of it, when you're a bit knackered and you want to waft home, you can.
Yeah, we've rented 4 identical cars before just to have kind of staff races. I shouldn't say that.
You've got to keep it fun, haven't
you? When we're all turning up in different cars that have got slightly different performance, we just want to, level it, don't you? But no, in all seriousness, I would go there in your own car, decide whether you want to take on that risk of doing a lap or not. It's, we've all got different kind of thresholds of what is acceptable risk or not.
Sure.
I would definitely consider renting a track car. I'd even go so far as, if you get chance to get somebody in the car with you, you can walk around the car park and ask for, to go out if somebody will take you out. Generally, I've not done TF in that regard for a long time. I tend to go and drive and do a lap and then go. But back in the day, you could walk around and start talking to people and say, can I jump in with you if you've got an empty passenger seat?
Yeah.
Definitely see about getting some instruction. I think I'd do that rather than just jump straight into a track day, because on my events, say Ringmeisters this year, 120 cars there. I think it's slightly less than that actually, but 120 cars in the car park. It's all very chilled and relaxed because it's such low numbers.
Sure.
I counted 84 GT3s.
Oh my God.
There were a smattering of then M2s. There were 2 Ferraris.
Yeah.
But mainly you're talking GT3s. And out of those 84 GT3s, 37 of them were RSs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least they're used. I mean, they're not garage queens, these cars.
Well, they appreciate, we're talking about the removal of risk or the managing risk. So they appreciate using them on track days rather than TF days, because they can use them with less risk to the cars. Because, again, taking a few steps backwards in the conversation, it's getting more and more difficult to insure these cars.
Yeah.
So, you're talking about taking a car out on track and, that's worth 350,000 euros, then you want to make sure that, you're not going to be sharing the track with too many idiots, basically. And that's why on Destination Nürburgring, we've kind of come up with these two different concepts, brands and sub-brands, and aimed at different people with different risk profiles. But I'd say go. If you've not been before, I'd go. I wouldn't even think twice about it. Just get over there. It's a fantastic place to spend time. Do laps, drink beer, eat steak, talk.
Oh, it's just great, isn't it?
It's not terrible, is it?
It's not terrible. I mean, you can go...
Do laps, drink beer, eat steak.
Yeah. I mean, I'm coming up for 20 years of going.
Yeah.
And I was saying to Dan on the way in, I can't imagine ever not visiting the place. Even if I didn't do what I did, I cannot imagine my life without a couple of boys' weekends a year over at the Nürburgring.
Yeah.
Okay,
Even if I don't drive anymore, I'd still go.
Yeah.
Okay, so what would you choose? I'm talking about a standard road car.
Yeah.
You can't have a 956, I'm afraid.
No.
But what would you choose? Not to sort of try and break your personal lap record or anything, but just to go and hoon around the ring in. What do you think is the optimum?
Do I own this car already?
No. It can be anything.
Oh, okay. I'd go for something, if you can, still naturally aspirated.
Yeah.
Something that's going to look after you,
Yeah.
that's going to be reasonably comfortable on the way over and handle reasonably well. It doesn't have to be, a knife precision kind of race car feel to it. It just needs to be because the ring is not a traditional race track.
Yeah.
You need compliancy for cars to work well around there. It's no good having rock solid suspension. Arguably, you need to make sure that it's in good nick. I'd say something like possibly a GT3, as boring as it sounds.
I thought that's where you were
But
going to go.
They are fantastic for it.
They are fantastic for it.
Cayman GT4 maybe?
Caymans are wonderful cars, absolutely fantastic. Probably, arguably, dynamically, the car the 911 should have evolved into being.
Yeah.
Very forgiving,
Yeah.
great handling, great road cars.
Yeah, great.
I'm trying to think of something that is not a Porsche.
Oh, it's tough though, isn't it?
That's not a Porsche. I mean, there's some great. I mean, you talk about Hyundai N20s, N30s, fantastic road cars, great on track. They, strong, reliable.
Yeah.
That they work well, something like that.
Yeah.
I think the most fun I've actually had going around there, and I've been around in a few things, is I used to have a K series Caterham which had a sort of what they call it the VHPD engine at 190 horsepower.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just so much fun because the Nürburgring is such a handling circuit, and that's what that car is all about. And because it was light, and you basically barely had to slow down for anything at all. I think that's what I'd go around. I think I'd just go around in a Caterham because they are actually incredibly forgiving cars. And they don't take up much space, and their attributes the Nürburgring's attributes play to the strengths of the Caterhams.
Yeah.
The only problem is you kind of got to get it there and back, haven't you?
Yeah, I got very bored of trailering cars.
Yeah, I mean, I used to drive it.
Yeah.
And it was great. I'd love driving it out because I'd be so excited. But then you've done your couple of days there and you just think, oh, God, it's 500 miles. I mean, and it's just... and you just sort of get in and, all right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, sorry.
We are running out of time, but we have to wrap this one up. Darren, it's been fascinating hearing about Nürburgring track days. Really good fun. I think we're going to have to make some plans for next year, Andrew.
Yeah, definitely.
Well,
I don't do influencers, by the way.
Okay, well, we're journalists. Is that different?
Well, journalists of some repute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone listening to this
We might scrape through.
who isn't an influencer?
Well, we'll leave it there, Darren. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And I will just remind all of you that you can get a 10% discount on a gift sub. We're only doing that until the middle of November, so be quick. Use the coupon code GIFT10 at checkout and you'll get a 10% discount. If you're not looking for a Christmas gift but you want to support us anyway, you can. We're offering podcast listeners a 15% discount on the cost of subscribing. At checkout, use coupon code POD15 and you'll get a 15% discount. It's the best way to support the show. Darren, thank you again, and maybe we'll catch up next year.
Hope so. Thanks for having me.
Not at all.
Pleasure.
Good to have you in. Cheers.